All right, everybody. This is an interesting one. Trump has continued to be under full assault by his own base over him lying to them about planning on releasing the Epstein files, which we all knew on the left he'd never do because we all knew that he was clearly implicated in them due to the countless cases that demonstrate evidence of Trump and Epstein's friendship and their, no doubt, collusion together, let's call it. And so when Trump went back on this Epstein files thing after just really just dangling it in front of his supporters' noses and then blue-balling them utterly, they're pissed at him now. He's under attack from all sides and doing everything he can to try to divert the attention to something else, to kill off this current stint of pretty universal critique towards Trump. He really does not like what's happening right now, and it's making him crash out a little bit. And one of the things he's decided to do in order to try and save face from all of this is have his Department of Justice reach out to Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine Maxwell, I'm going to call her, in order to give some kind of testimony that might help assuage the anger of the average Trump supporter. You know, like, we managed to get Ghislaine Maxwell to leak so-and-so. Apparently, Trump is claiming he had no idea the DOJ did this. He has been getting a lot of criticism for this act because people are seeing it as him trying to continue squeezing or squirming out of this. And so he's gotten called out from every direction. It's not just the left, it's the right as well. He is kind of in quicksand right now, and the more he struggles, the deeper he sinks himself into it. And it's kind of hilarious to watch. He has no idea how you get out of quicksand. It's amazing. Anyway, let's learn about what's going on here with this Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell DOJ situation.
Lisa, what do you think this DOJ meeting that he just said he didn't know about, but he thinks is appropriate, is all about?
I can only speculate what it's about, given the statements that have been made both by Todd Blanche and by Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer, David Oscar Marcus. But Chris, one of the things that weighs heavily on me is where Ghislaine Maxwell is in her own journey in terms of contesting her conviction. Ghislaine Maxwell's 20-year sentence has been upheld by the Second Circuit. That's a federal court of appeals. She needs
to rot there forever. I know they want to give her some kind of incentive, so she'll like spill something, maybe. Maybe they don't. But, like, I don't think she should see any time taken off of those 20 years. 20 years is like, God, that doesn't seem like much, does it, right? Like, isn't it mandatory, like, 12 years after your third, like, marijuana conviction or something? Like, that's more than half, supposedly, what you get for helping to orchestrate a child sex trafficking ring. I'm not the only one who feels like Ghislaine Maxwell got real light time, right? Like 20 years for what she did? I get that's the standard, but I just think it's disgusting. Like, more people should be talking about the fact that, like, sex trafficking gets you 20 years. You know, like, that's nothing. That is literally nothing.
Through the briefing before the Supreme Court to try and get the Supreme Court to review that conviction. The Department of Justice itself submitted a brief just last week in which they said that conviction should stand because Ghislaine Maxwell was essentially not entitled to claim protection from a deal that Florida prosecutors cut with Jeffrey Epstein many years before that. That's the only question that's being asked of the Supreme Court. Was it right to say that Ghislaine Maxwell has no rights to enforce that agreement and therefore it was just to prosecute her? So one of the things that could be on the table here is Ghislaine Maxwell is facing 20 years in prison. She's already incarcerated. Her only saving grace right now could be a presidential pardon. And so there might be a deal to be made here, a pardon in exchange for congressional testimony or public statements about who else was involved. Remember, if you're pardoned, you can no longer claim the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination because you have no prosecution to protect against. So if Ghislaine Maxwell is pardoned here, the Trump administration she has nothing to say in terms of protecting herself. She would have to talk if compelled to testify by a congressional committee.
Dude, if Ghislaine Maxwell dies in prison, before any of this testimony stuff can come out, like, it won't be a conspiracy anymore. We'll all know. We'll all be sure exactly what's going on. That'll be the final piece of confirmation we need.
The last thing I'll say is she would not be the first person who is incarcerated to be compelled to testify before a congressional committee. The fact that she's incarcerated now is not a barrier to bringing her before Congress to testify in either the House or the Senate.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So apparently, like, she might just be pulled from prison to testify in front. That's wild. I didn't know that was even a thing, but shit. If that happens, Trump's going to be in some trouble if she starts running her mouth about, yeah. So I don't know how she sounds, but yeah, I saw Donald Trump massaging Epstein's feet on Little St. James Island. I saw it plenty. They were on the Lolita Express. You know, Trump's going to have to stop that.
But here's the key question, Tom. What are the chances Ghislaine Maxwell has some kind of critical information that hasn't been out there before? And what are the chances it comes out publicly, if it even exists?
I don't know what the heck she could testify to. I don't know what's going on here. The Trump administration successfully brought a case against Jeffrey Epstein in their first administration, a good investigation, and had a lot of evidence against him at the time when he died by suicide. He's dead. He's been dead for almost 6 years. So there's nothing new about Jeffrey Epstein as far as his activities since then. The Ghislaine Maxwell or any...
That's crazy. The fact it does not feel like the Jeffrey Epstein death was 6 years ago. Or, like, it feels like it was 3 years ago. If you asked me 5 minutes ago, how long ago did Jeffrey Epstein die, I would have said 3 years at the most. I wouldn't even have even guessed 4. That's wild. It really goes to show that people really care about this. Americans, politically, they have goldfish memories, but this is just one of those things that no one is letting go of. And I'm glad. It's actually... For once, people's tendency to latch on to the most random things and never let go, they finally latched on to something that's like, yeah, okay, no, this is legit. We do need answers about this. I agree. Something's afoot here.
Anybody else could testify to. As far as Ghislaine Maxwell, she is a convicted sex trafficker, period. Girls as young as 14 years old. That's what she's testified to. Prosecutors found her, we reported this at the time, found the activity and the things that they uncovered in the course of their investigation with the FBI here in New York. They found her behavior to be abhorrent. They aggressively prosecuted her on that case and were able to get a 20-year, as Lisa said, a 20-year prison sentence as a result. So as far as what else she has to bring, as we reported at the time, I was in the hearing, probably between me and 20 feet between myself and Ghislaine Maxwell. Federal prosecutors said, and the defense attorneys did not disagree with the fact that they never offered her a plea agreement at the time, nor had she asked for one. So it's not like she came to them and said, you know, you guys might think you have me, but I have all sorts of other information I can give you. That was not the case back when she was on the trial effectively for her life. It's not a life imprisonment, but 20 years at her age is a long time. So there's no information that's come up then. There's no information in all the files that have come out. I mean, she's been deposed. People have been deposed about her activities for a decade plus. There's no information that's come up that suggests any sort of a client list. The Justice Department, whether people want to believe it or not, have already told you that there's no client list that exists. We've found no evidence of that over the decade of our reporting on it. So what else does she have?
I'm glad he said that. I hope the media continues to claim the same thing the government does, that there's no evidence of an Epstein client list, because that gets the conservatives to believe the media is covering for Trump. The right only hates one thing more than they love Trump, and that's the media. They hate the mainstream media, they hate MSNBC, they hate CNN. So if CNN and MSNBC are continuing to say there's no Epstein files according to the government, and we believe them, then right-wingers will continue to call out Trump. How did Ghislaine even meet Epstein? Oh, I watched a big deep dive on all of this shit a couple days ago. I think they met at a party in Florida. Like, Epstein was specifically seeking out a woman to do what he had Ghislaine Maxwell do. also Epstein, like how he got to where he is and how he got so rich is highly contested. And there are a lot of people with surprisingly compelling arguments claiming that he is possibly an Israeli asset. So that's kind of crazy.
Have to offer. There's all sorts of, to Lisa's point about the speculation about the types of things that she could say, the types of things politically she could say. I'm a law enforcement reporter. I'm focused on the law. I'm focused on criminality. I don't know what else she adds to the conversation at this point. And I do wonder what the victims think about the opportunity that she has a chance to speak out publicly, not in the court of law. Presumably, she could be held liable for lying to Congress if she did something along those lines. But what does she have to offer at this point? That's the big question. She's absolutely going to argue, again, to something Elisa.
What does she have to offer? How much of a cuck is this guy? Dude, supposedly hundreds of victims and like no clients to speak of. No one even accused publicly of anything besides Trump. Trump's the only person who's had victims, as far as I know, come out and say Epstein and Trump raped us. I don't think there's been anyone else that anyone's come forward about, as far as we know, or as far as I know. And so either everybody who claimed there were hundreds of victims lied, or there are hundreds of victims, and who victimized them according to those victims is being kept hush-hush. Like, hundreds of victims and no claims, no names are getting thrown around, nothing. We don't believe it. So yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell has a lot she could tell us. Let's make that very clear. There is a lot Ghislaine Maxwell could tell us.
Alluded to going through the appellate system. She's talked about this nonstop, the idea that she was covered by the non-prosecution agreement, which is a real stretch. The courts have already ruled with respect to the law, or literally any legal analyst you could possibly talk to. So I just don't understand what the tactic is here to continue to bring this up. The Trump administration's Justice Department in the first term, if you want to look at it as far as, convictions they were able to get, charges they were able to bring, they already won. So we're going back and revisiting this issue.
I understand what you're both saying, approaching it from the law, but let's approach it from politics. And what we all know, Jeremy, is that the MAGA base wants answers. Whether or not the questions they're asking are legitimate, whether or not
And they're valid. Like, wanting answers to this question is valid. The guy they voted for promised them consistently that if he got into office, all the veils of secrecy would be lifted and the Epstein files would finally come out. Trump claimed he was going to drain the swamp and that the people would finally get answers and there'd be transparency. And it was a lie. Trump supporters have every right to feel upset about it right now.
The information is already out there. They want something that they haven't seen yet. And just now, and the president is continuing to answer questions, he's been talking while we were talking about Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. He's been talking about the 2020 election and how he was robbed. He's been talking about the Autopen. He's been talking about anything that's not related to Epstein. And then he said something earlier, not only that he didn't know about Blanche, but he wants people to stop talking about this nonsense. I'm not paying attention. Mm-hmm. What do you see is going on here?
He is literally throwing out every other piece of red meat in right-wing conspiracy theory world that he can at the moment. Some of these stories have, more legitimacy to them than others. But, the bottom line is here, he is going to continue to embellish facts about, for example, what the Obama administration supposedly did to block his election in.
We're going to get into that bit, or that little detail, a little later in the stream, next segment. But that's a whole thing. The Obama thing, that is a whole thing. I want to talk about it, but I'm setting that aside for later. What's an Autopen? Okay. An Autopen is a device that the president will sometimes use when signing a long string of bills or bills that require several signatures in order to, like, say, just click a button in order to auto-sign the signature. It's like a little device that's tuned to, like, scribble out a set signature. And every president has used one since they became a thing. It's handy. helps to stop your wrist from hurting and your fingers from getting all sore. And Trump claims that bills Biden signed with an Autopen, because he didn't physically sign them, would no longer be considered officially signed by the president. There is no legal established precedent for that claim, of course. And on top of that, Trump has yet to prove any bill he's challenged on this basis was signed by Biden using an Autopen. And so Trump has just really gotten attached to this Autopen talking point, just not letting it go, talking about how evil the Democrats are for passing bills using Autopens and considering it valid. Anything he can do to get a new talking point in the mouths of his supporters.
In 2016, that's a latest fixation of his and of some of the MAGA influencers on the right. I mean, the problem is, as Tom laid out, there is nothing that the Trump administration can give to the Trump base right now that will satisfy them. As Thomas said, it doesn't exist.
How about
but
a
even if
client
it did
list?
exist, it wouldn't satisfy them, because that's what conspiracy theories are. They are never ending and self-perpetuating.
Well, that's the problem, right? Let's say that
I'm not even mad. I'm just glad to see MSNBC and CNN are technically on Trump's side here, which makes Trump look worse to his own base. This is the best case scenario. MSNBC and CNN jumping on Trump for this would probably make Trump supporters defensively or reflexively defend Trump. This makes them reflexively attack Trump to own the mainstream media. Like I said before, the mainstream media is the only thing Trump supporters hate more than they love Trump.
they released the grand jury transcripts, and there's a ton of redactions. Maybe
I know what they're going to say. Grand jury transcripts are going to be the testimony that was used in the indictment against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. We already know the indictments are a summary of the grand jury testimony. To think that there's some sort of a unearthed piece of thing that's in there, they present the case to the grand jury that they want them to vote on to get to an indictment. So, yes, there might be more granular detail, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't expect there to be any sort of
but my point is,
diamond.
if there's anything at all that's redacted, that's another basis for a conspiracy theory.
That is correct. And there will be, to the extent that a federal judge allows any of these things to see the light of day. And that is a big if, because for the most part, they aren't released to the public. The law precludes it. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they will be redacted heavily. Why? Because there's all sorts of victim identifying information in there, and not just their names. Chris, think about it this way. I could write something about my interactions with you, and I would take your name away from it. But if I talked about your physical identifying details, where you lived, your phone number,
No one's asking for the victims to be doxxed, bro. Like, what they want is, like, for the victims, if anything, to have an anonymous voice. Like, give them an anonymous means through which they can accuse the people who victimize them. Let them take these people to court. You know, I don't know. Like, clearly, like, why would the Trump administration say over 200 names? Were they just lying? Like, I wouldn't put it past them, but I also think that there's a lot of victims to this Epstein thing, and I don't think that's necessarily a number they just pulled out of their ass. I think maybe they knew.
where you went to school, people could piece together a composite that we're talking about Chris Jansing. And so there is going to be a ton of redactions in anything that's released publicly from the grand jury. I would suggest to people who are eager for more details, there are tons of deposition transcripts that have been unsealed in various civil litigations involving Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. I read two yesterday, one where Ghislaine Maxwell was the deponent, another where Jeffrey Epstein was the deponent. MAGA wants this handed to them in a binder with a bow wrapped around it, but anybody who has a computer and a Pacer password can get all the access they want to information, including very pointed questions.
Americans cannot be expected to put in that kind of work, okay? It's very well and good that you have the ability to put in that effort. You cannot expect the average American to have the time, effort, energy, or knowledge to do such a thing. Who the fuck knows what a Pacer password is? No one knows about these cases. Like, 90% of people get all of their political knowledge from tertiary sources. No one goes to primary or secondary sources to get their information anymore unless they are that tertiary source of information and they're doing their due diligence. You can't just demand people go out of their way to look for these things. They go to podcasters, they go to news anchors, they go to people that talk about these topics to explain it to them. Like, yeah, they should be willing to put in the work and look into these things themselves. But I kind of think if Trump promises a binder with all the information they're interested in and a little bow on it, when Trump promises that and doesn't deliver that to his base who vote him in partially on the grounds they believe he'll do that, I think they have every right to be mad. I think they have every right to be mad. They're dumb, and I agree they should be willing to do this basic research if they really care so much, but Trump made a promise, and they have every right to be mad it wasn't kept.
From, for example, Virginia Gifford, she's one of the most famous victims, her lawyer to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, asking about other people who might be implicated. But the truth remains that Jeffrey Epstein operated a sex trafficking ring principally for his own benefit. As one of the victim's lawyers has said, he was both the pimp and the John. That is an inconvenient truth that MAGA world does not want to accept. They want to see that there is a long list of clients, but for the most part, with a handful of exceptions, the person who was benefited by this perverse sex trafficking ring was Jeffrey Epstein and at times Ghislaine Maxwell.
Jeffrey Epstein, the only person involved in all of this. He's dead now from, he just killed himself, all right? Everything just tied itself up in a neat little bow. No need for deep investigation. There's nothing else to worry about here, nothing else to think about. Everything just worked itself out. Not only was Jeffrey Epstein the only bad guy specifically in this, hurting children, but he killed himself in prison. So story's over. Book ended. Happy ending. Go on with your lives, folks. Pay no more attention to this story. Nothing to see here, folks. Wild to see MSNBC and Trump agreeing on something. Who's the CEO of MSNBC? And are there any photos of him and Epstein together at a party? That's my homework for you guys today. Go look up who the CEO of MSNBC is and find out if he's ever taken a photo at a party with Jeffrey Epstein. If that exists, I think we know why these anchors are so dead set on claiming there's nothing more to this Epstein story, and Trump supporters are just overreacting. Oh, America, not just Trump supporters, but America are just overreacting. Anyway, folks, if you enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way whatsoever, then please consider leaving a like and a comment down below on this video or stream, whichever you're watching. It really does help a lot. Every single one of you that does it forces YouTube to boost my channel in the algorithm and, it gets seen by more people, which helps it to grow. So it does mean a lot. And of course, if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos in the future. And if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you can follow my social medias linked down below in the description, particularly my fan Discord, which is linked down below and is the main hub of my community and fan base. On top of that, I host gaming events, call-in streams, watch parties, or movie nights there every week on Fridays. Some weeks I miss it, but it's almost every week, so I recommend you join so you don't miss anything. On top of that, if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merchandise through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you all so much for watching. Whether you're a liker or a lurker, please be a liker, though. And as always, have a good one.